Welcome to the 100X Studios. This is the first episode of the Two Big Guys podcast hosted by Scott Grover, Cody McGee, Cris Welch, Scott Grover, right
what
here.
Up?
Welcome to the studio this morning, fellers.
Yeah, nice little breezy 23 degrees in Kansas City, Missouri.
It's beautiful here today.
Yeah.
Can almost not even wear a coat.
Shorts weather.
Shorts weather. So what's the podcast going to be about? We're going to talk about a lot about Western sports. Surprise, surprise, but that is what we deal with each and every day. But we're also going to talk about, things that matter in the world.
Like, life outside.
Yeah, how to help people. Talk about football.
Love it.
That's what really matters right now here in Kansas City.
Because we are a championship city.
That's right.
First time in 50 years we won the Super Bowl and had a big parade downtown last week in KC. And
it was a sea of red.
It was it's a cool time to live in Kansas City.
Well, I'll go back. You go back to 2015. Scott, you and I were there, and we went down. When the Royals won the World Series, we got to do the whole parade thing, but it was 85 degrees and not, or 80 degrees, not 16 degrees like it was the other day.
Yeah, we didn't go this time.
Yeah, so we didn't have an opportunity, or we didn't go or choose not to, but it was pretty neat.
It was a balmy 69 degrees, 70 degrees when I was watching it on TV.
Yeah.
And I was good with that.
But for those of you that are from the Kansas City area listening to us today, to give you the realm of how big this deal was, for the Royals parade, you parked at the American Royal.
Yeah.
And we came and got you to take you to Union Station. However, Kansas City was not ready for what happened during the Royals.
No.
They were way more on the ball for the Chiefs parade and had buses running. There were people walking from the American Royal complex from there to Union Station in downtown Kansas City. That's a long ways, and people walked it and jogged it to get up there for the rally.
And the thing was, and we saw it with this parade too, was the porta potties and the food and the trash and all those things that they thought they had fixed from the Royals parade. They clearly did not, because Kansas City showed up again. I mean, they were not expecting that many people to actually be here, and they were here.
And shut down school in like a 3-state area. I mean, half of Iowa, I think, was out. Most of Kansas and most of Missouri didn't have school that day.
The news was reporting, I think they had reached 110 schools canceled, and then that was on Monday morning.
And they called it a red snow day.
A red snow day. And then everybody was worried about they were going to move the parade because of the weather potential to come through, and 2 days would have been pretty cool for the kids.
I'm pretty sure that there were a lot of people that called in not only on Monday, but called in on Wednesday and Thursday, because if anybody partied like the guys did, as we all got to see, I mean,
they were having fun.
But I tell you what, I think that we got to see a whole nother set of athleticism out of Mahomes.
The one-handed snag.
Yeah. In order to catch a beer can from that far.
That's a shortstop right there.
That was pretty impressive, but not as impressive as the guy that was running to catch the ball that Mahomes was throwing that ran smack dab into the parking meter downtown, and I mean cooled him right there. That was probably the highlight.
I kind of liked watching Kelsey take a beer off the top as Mahomes held it out and poured it in his mouth.
Off the top of the bus?
Yeah.
Although, after Mahomes one-handed snag, reached out, pulled it out of the air, he busted it open and dropped it right there.
Yeah, that's what college will do for you.
On a 17-degree day. So,
and then who was it that was taking the shot? You can't drink out of the Stanley Cup you drink out of, and all those kinds of things.
It was Kelsey.
Was it Kelsey?
Yeah. He poured
it down the Lombardi.
Down the Lombardi.
And because he was a hockey player growing up, and he said, "Man, I've always dreamed of taking a drink out of the Stanley Cup. We don't have a cup in football, so
that's a pretty good second best right there."
But how about it for Andy Reid? I mean, and to me, Andy Reid is the biggest mystery in my life right now, because I think I sit there and I look at the guy and how much respect everybody has for him, and I say he must be a motivator somehow, but when you get him on camera, he doesn't say a whole lot.
He inspires you.
I think that's where you have to find you find really good coaches. They can bring out different levels of competitiveness, different levels of. I mean, to watch Patrick Mahomes be down and continue to work the sideline like he did, I think comes from not only, I don't want to take anything away from him, but that's good coaches. That's, his dad played at a different level of competitiveness. We brought it up saying, hey, I played baseball, and you can be, as a pitcher, you can be walk 2 guys, and then all of a sudden you can strike 3 out, and you're out of the inning, and it's over, and then you get to start over again. And I think that's his mentality a lot of times.
He'd make a great defensive back because he has a memory. You know, he can move on. He can make that mistake. Up, I threw a pick. Let me piss and moan about it for a little bit, get it out of my system, and then walk back to everybody and go. But I think that stems from Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you never see him lose it.
Mm-hmm.
High or low, you know, even celebrating he doesn't get over the top. And he's not screaming and yelling at the referees.
But I think we've also seen that he's a thinker, that, you know, that he carries his emotions and thought, because they talked about how he had a different playbook that he's wrote his whole life for the Super Bowl, and he was going to use plays that hadn't been used. And Bellini came back and said half the plays that he wrote out and half the plays that Reed had wrote, they started putting them together, and then they held a whole nother playbook all of a sudden.
But I think this is kind of an example of Reed being a coach, and I think inspiring and validating everyone is that it can all be seen as soon as the offense comes off the field. What do? He goes and sits down with Mahomes, right? He and Mahomes sit there and have that conversation of, yeah, I don't like this. Oh, yeah, this one's good. Hey, they dropped down the safety, whatever. I think, but he at that point, now that's the head coach walking away from the sidelines, sitting back on a bench while the game going on.
Yeah.
And so I think he empowers his guys and trusts in them, you know, to do their job when it's their turn. And I think as he's doing his job back here, and I think that starts from here with the staff. I think it comes to the players. It's not just Sunday. It's all the preparation that goes in. So on Sunday, it's hard to coach it up again, except it's a strategy change, you know.
Well, and we saw that too. I mean, if you saw in the inside the play that NFL puts out, you know, they show the wasp, you know, running the wasp, and that's a big term here in Kansas City this week. But, you know, he walks over the sideline and talks to his offensive coordinator and says, do I have time? Do we have time to run wasp? And all he was asking is, do you think the line can give me enough time to get Tyreek down the hill and I can get the ball there?
Yeah.
And so he was thinking ahead of, you know, that next play, because to him it wasn't a matter of being a first down. It was a matter of, I got to score.
Yep.
In order to score, we got to put the ball in position.
What's been amazing to me is to see the group of players that Kansas City has put together, and there's a lot of strong personalities on that team, but there's not a lot of ego on that team.
Right.
You could break it down. You could have conversations all day about who should have won the MVP of the Super Bowl. And not everybody's going to agree that it should have been Patrick Mahomes. But I never once saw anybody on that team or since talk about the disgruntledness of that or anything. Everybody understands their piece of the puzzle. And what I like about Patrick Mahomes is that he's a young guy that could quickly his head could blow up. But you very seldom hear that guy say, I.
Ever.
It never comes out of his mouth that they gave me, or I did this, or I did that.
And when he's talking about success or talking about a win, you never hear him say, well, I was able to do this, or I was like, he never. No. But when they lose, what does he always do?
It's about
I've got to play better. I've got to make better decisions. And I give you I think it was Lamar Jackson after his playoff game. He was talking about his type of leadership, which was all good. And he said he was talking to his team, and he said, hey, we got to do great things today. He goes, and so, you know, they were talking about big plays then. He goes, so what I was thinking was, somebody's got to be great. Why can't it just be me? Now, I don't think you'd ever hear that from Mahomes. No. You're hearing him talk about how great and clutch Kelsey, you know, all these guys were in different situations. The offensive line gave him the time, you know, and very well. The running back very well. I mean, I think he might have had the best.
We did have the best.
Right. I mean, he's had 6 touchdowns during the playoff run. It was huge when they got him back.
But again, that's the difference in a team sport and bull riding.
Yeah, we'll hit on that too.
You know, but I'm saying, but for those guys, guys that play individual sports carry that I because it is on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the great successes that you've seen out of Patrick Mahomes in the little bit that he's been in Kansas City. But even when he's at Texas Tech, he did the same thing. All his coaches there, and everybody talks about how he did the same thing there. And Andy Reid saw that, going back to great coaching. Andy in the front office said, hey, you know what? This kid looks like he might be a fit. But he even said when he got here, Alex Smith helped him hone that skill of
that was awesome.
Getting rid of I and being
he made sure and mentioned that.
Yeah.
And said, hey, the first person, as I'm coming off, looking at my phone or whatever, he texted him and said, It's awesome. And he said, he's the one that established the culture here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to come in after that.
And now it's off-season time, so we'll see how many of those players are going to stick around. Coach Reed did tell them in the locker room when it was over, cherish this moment. Take it, because this is the last time you will all be together. Because no matter how, somebody will leave this team.
Well, and I think that's the inevitable in any professional sport of that level, team sport, that guys are going to come and go, and you still have to be able to build and rebuild. And, you know, everybody, especially in Kansas City, has been talking about, well, Brady did it and Brady did that, but Brady also did.
They had guys come and go there like a revolving door.
They did, and they kept a crew. They kept a core set of guys, and Brady was willing to sacrifice for those guys. But there's also been a number of guys that have left and never came back that Brady could have definitely had a lot more opportunity with. So we lost it. We had it happen with the Royals. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it many times here in Kansas City.
Oh yeah, but that fell apart 2 days later. We're hoping that doesn't.
But I think that's Kansas City's fear right now.
Well, I think we got more money on the football side though than we ever thought about having on the baseball side.
But anytime you see a player that's going to get $40 million on a 5-year contract, I mean, to be the highest paid player in the history of football. Which is awesome. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, because it goes back to the same talk of, and I think goes back to the bull riding talk we've talked about before, that, you know, you can buy a subpar player for $30 million, or you can have Patrick Mahomes for $40.
Yeah.
You go ahead and spend it. We talk about that. I can go have a hamburger for $12, or I can go eat a steak for $17 or $18. Mm-hmm. We go eat a steak because that's what we like. Yep. Same thing goes for these guys.
Well, we'll see what the decision is on Mahomes. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. Nah. I think he'll do the best he can to keep the band together so that they can go try to win a second Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Shout out to I actually muted half of the game to listen to Mitch Holthus on the radio, because he's the greatest play-by-play guy that Kansas City's ever had, as far as my opinion is. So, just what a great weekend it was for Kansas City. Winning the Super Bowl, having a big parade. It's a fun time to live here. We've got some more championship events coming to Kansas City in Western sports. We'll talk about those a little bit later on. But let's give you a little weekend in review when it comes to bull riding, Western sports, rodeos, all of that. Stetson Wright is leading the San Angelo Stock Show and Rodeo. San Antonio just kicked off. Scotty Knapp is leading going into the semifinals in his pool. J.W. Harris actually won his pool and will be going on to the semifinals, which the new tournament style rodeos, everybody seems like they're going to that place because it's easier for the fans to understand there was a champion winner. That's a whole nother subject in my book. I was
waiting for that full
Congratulations to Brady Portnier for winning Fort Worth. He picked up $20,000 there. Coy Polmeyer won the Extreme Bulls in Rapid City, South Dakota at the Black Hills Stock Show and Rodeo. And big shout out to Cody Campbell. He wins Youngstown, Ohio on the Pendleton Whiskey Velocity Tour. Those points that he got there, he rode 2 of 3, so missed out on 7 points by winning the championship round. But that moved him to number 23 in the world.
I was just checking that.
Yeah, moved him all the way to number 23 in the world.
Let's talk about Youngstown for a second, because you had a number of guys that have been on tour, like a Gage Gay and a handful of those guys that had the opportunity because they did not go to Iron Cowboy to come there. And yet Cody's still consistently, we've talked about, he's consistent and he's able to, but who else was at that event?
And he's fixed, so he's healthy.
Okay.
So we had, there was Gage Gay, there was,
because we're right at the mix right now. We're a couple weeks away from cutoff. Well, and that's when your tour changes up a lot.
Yeah, it's going to change. It's going to change a lot. But the telltale sign of the Velocity Tour will now be this coming weekend in Memphis, because. So the Global Cup happens this weekend at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. Right. That means if you did not make a Global Cup team, you can enter the Velocity event at Memphis, or there's a Touring Pro in Texarkana. So I talked to Sean Willingham. Sean is the 30th alternate to get into Memphis.
Because everything's just trickling down.
Because the top 35 guys get the first right to go. Then it's after that. Campbell's been hurt. So Campbell's just been... You know, he made a conscious decision at the beginning of the year to call the office and say, I want in every one of them.
Right.
You know, you get me entered in all those Velocity Tour events. And now that he's made the most of it, it slides him up. So if he, you know, he's going to go to Memphis, and if he can do a little bit more there, he's number one in the Velocity standings.
Solidifies his.
He will move up even farther in the world standings.
And when is the cut?
And be on tour.
When is the cut?
Between St. Louis and Kansas City.
Is it pre Kansas City?
It's pre Kansas City.
Okay. Yeah.
But back to that, you've also talking about guys trying to get entered. We've had a number of PRCA guys, quote unquote, make the move over, and so they went ahead and entered the same events.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing those guys trickle in. I mean, Eli Vassbinder has been going every weekend.
Yep, and been struggling. Honestly, been struggling on the Velocity Tour. Boudreaux Campbell was the guy that everybody had their eye on. He didn't come to Youngstown this week. Part of that had to do with, I think, San Antonio.
Yeah, he was up in San Antonio.
And you have to still, it's hard to turn out of them big winter rodeos right now because, I mean, and what's crazy is we think it's so busy in the bull riding deal, you can't keep up right now on television coverage of rodeo. You know, it's in your face so much. There's San Antonio, Fort Worth just got over. San Angelo's still rolling. Denver just got over, but the Black Hill Stock Show just got over. Tucson's going to start pretty soon. And then it's going to be Rodeo Houston.
But how does a guy like Boudreaux balance that, you know, San Antonio versus, you know, having that opportunity to get in the top 35 of the PBR? Because at last, you know, I mean, you look at Cody Campbell. He jumped up to 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, he can show up, ride here and there, kind of perform and maintain and stay in the top 35 in theory, right? So a guy misses one event that he could have won on the PBR Velocity.
The only problem with not going to those rodeos, you get into those rodeos on your qualifications from a year
prior
before. So a guy like Boudreaux that wants to make, I know he wants to make the NFR and the PBR finals in the same year. That's probably what he's going to try to go to.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to, okay, why is Sage Kimsey not here?
Right.
It's those exact reasons right there. Because if you don't show up for an Unleash the Beast series event, that's a big dinger. But if you turn out of Fort Worth on Sunday to go to a PBR, then you don't go to Fort Worth the next year,
right?
Or San Antonio. It's however their ground rules are written. But if you turn out other than an injury, you're not going to go, and then your qualifications are messed up. It just depends on where you want to be full time, I think.
But you get through the first 12 weeks of the year, and you get through Houston, San Antonio, Fort Worth, San Angelo, Rapid City. Once you're through those first 12 weeks, you're 12 weeks behind on 12 events or more on the PBR side, but you still got plenty of time to push, especially with the way the points are made now.
You've got plenty of time to qualify for the World Finals, but you don't have plenty of time to win a world title. I don't believe.
I don't think with the point system right now, and you are not going to ever be able to rodeo on the PRCA side and still win a world championship on the PBR side. I don't think there's any way to mathematically, also in a calendar, to make that work. You're going to have to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
So let's take Sage, for example. As he goes through this, for him to give up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to be full-time on PBR side, there wouldn't be enough events to win. Is that what you're saying? You don't think there's enough left to win the world
on the PRCA side?
The only way he'd be able to do it, he would have to ride every single bull all summer and win dang near every rodeo he went to.
Well, I mean,
I think
we can go back to last year. He was hurt. Sage. Last year he was hurt in the first half of the year, the shoulder, and we saw him get by on the PRCA side. You can't do that because then, an injury plagues you. But what I'm trying to say is you're out both then, and you can't be into both of them at the same time. And so I don't think there's a way for a guy to
balance it.
Not with the way the point system is currently. There's no way to do that now.
Okay.
So we'll see what a lot of those guys think and do. But yep, Eli Vassbinder.
I want to go back to let's go back to Velocity real quick.
Yep.
Have you seen a change in have you seen a change in the riding percentage of guys on the Velocity Tour since you're seeing more bull teams there?
Not enough.
No, I don't think so.
No?
This has been a sticky subject that we've talked about the last couple of weeks. That we've had events where we haven't had bull team competitions, and they've either worked out or they haven't worked out. The other night we only rode 8 or 9 bulls in round number 1 of a bull team competition with 45 guys. But then you get back on time. Okay, so guys that rode 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 7.5, they're going to get back into the top 30. But when it comes down to it, if you don't ride your bulls, you don't get paid, you don't get any points. So are we riding enough bulls right now? No. On the velocity level, are the percentages high enough? No.
Okay, so the reason I ask is, so if you go down through and you start looking at numbers on bulls and weights, bulls, and I know judges are different every weekend, but I saw a number of 39.5 to 41 point bulls in there. That guy that makes the jump from that level of animal to 43 to 45s is going to have a really tough go. And so are we doing our guys any good? And I love the stock contracting side and watching these bulls, and had a couple of my older bulls were there again this weekend, who had good outs. I mean, I watched them both, and I think, they were at the upper echelon of those numbers. But my point is, if we're going to have the bull teams with these guys, and are we setting them up for success coming from the Velocity Tour with the type of animals that we're putting in place? Because those guys are competing for money too.
Yeah. The stock contractors.
I'm not sure that's the priority.
Yeah,
right. I'm not sure that's the priority.
And it's on the guys riding the bulls. That helps in your point structure.
Yeah,
for your bull team competition. My only other comeback to that is that, okay, we're an expansion of the top 35, so we're the next set of guys. But in a way, it still is gaining some confidence to then go to that next level. So I think it's just like when you send a pitcher down, you send that pitcher down to get outs. Okay, so where he feels like, oh man, I struck out 13 guys. Right. I'm doing good. I'm really doing good. So that when he gets to that next level, his confidence is there.
But we're not riding. That's my point.
That's a little bit troubling with animals, though, when you go from, getting on what you got on the Velocity Tour, and then, the next week, here you got Smooth Operator. But I don't know how you.
Some guys balance it and some guys don't, right?
Well, like Bradley Britton. I mean, you saw him go up. I think that's where,
and rides his first 2 bulls at that level.
My point is that you watch and then you see a guy like Jake Lockwood, who is making the move. We all know he's going to make the move, but the speed at which it happens, the animals are much faster. They're stronger. They're so much smarter. And that's what a lot of people forget about, Velocity Tour. You got bulls that are smart. I'm not taking it away, but are we setting our guys up for success with the teams? And that's why
it's a tough balance.
I can't. Yeah, that is a tough balance. Yeah. I think for our fans, I think it has been it's been a good deal. I think for those bull team guys that went and bought those franchises that then saw their way of life could have been crumbled pretty quick. There was a lot of money on that table when the whole thing
CBR.
came
along.
CBR was done.
Absolutely.
We were the game in town, and so it's been interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how that continues to grow. I know we like having them around. That whole $1 million bull team operation has been good for our events.
It keeps it. I'm not saying keep it exciting, but it keeps an urgency, or it's a play out every weekend on top of just.
And it's cool to watch the owners now start trading bulls around.
Yeah,
because you'll look. We've got a stat screen up there as announcers, and we're seeing that. Okay, well, this bull's owned by so and so, and then you look on the back of the bucket sheets and you go, but that's not. So they're
4 weeks ago, weren't you?
Yeah. So they're playing the game too, and it's
you have to.
It's neat to watch that now with the bull business side of it as well. But a guy that did not have any learning curve at all this week was Cole Melanson, the 2-time Wrangler National finalist. That he did good at Denver, Colorado at the National Western, the Velocity event there. He won. He split Lexington, Kentucky.
And that's what got him on up this weekend, right?
That got
Correct.
him.
That was his
that's what got
opportunity.
That
him
was his opportunity.
to the Staples Center for PBR's Iron Cowboy to only be the second rookie in PBR history to win a major. And for a guy that so the first time we see Cole is he wins the college championship.
Yep.
And Coach McBride decides to put him on Team USA.
Well, he just come
in
out of
Edmonton.
and he just got the call to go to the NFR.
And
he
had just found out he got to go to the NFR.
Yeah.
So they put him on Global Cup team in Edmonton for the inaugural. And then we are learning now that if Dalton Castle does not ride for Team USA, then
it'll be him.
Then Cole will be the pick, which is interesting. Then now there will be 3 quote unquote rodeo guys on Team USA. But let's before we get to Team USA, let's talk about Cole Melanson.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about the whole event. I mean, you've got an event that I think, one, you are in the shadows of a professional sport losing one of their premier athletes, and you're in that building. And as professional athletes walking into there, our guys show a lot of respect everywhere we go. But you could see the respect.
The guys were talking about it too.
Yeah, you could see
how
and
cool
hear.
is this to be in this house?
Well, and a shout out to the PBR, to production. Matt West, I thought, did a great job of selling it. The opening the other night was about Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
It had our athletes of the PBR talking about Kobe, and then we turned out our greatest of all time, Bull Bushwhacker, into the arena for a 9-second ride. And I thought that was such a classy way to take everything that's happened in these last couple of weeks, put it together, where we showed our respect for an amazing.
Well, and I think that's something that the outside world. I know that people listening and those that understand rodeo, that we all feel the same way, but to have the opportunity to show our respect for another sport doesn't happen a lot, because we're so caught up in the day-to-day business. And we talked about a minute ago, making sure we're at this rodeo and
our own little world.
Yeah. And so, we check Sports Center, and we talked about football and those things. But for our athletes, kids that don't, and I don't say they don't put in the work or they don't do those things, but team athlete kids go to college and those things, it's a different level of commitment as far as time and things. And so those guys are constantly watching Sports Center, and they understand stats. And what I've found over the last few years with our guys, the younger guys, they follow professional sports as close as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to be able to be in those locker rooms and in that hallway this week, I think just gave them an opportunity.
Yeah,
to,
I'd be willing to bet that it wasn't just the young guns. That
no,
Jose Vitor LeMay made mention of that, of the level of athletes that this place belongs to.
Right.
So I think they were all in awe.
Yeah.
In respect of it.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is there's our guys get so caught up in being we use the word machismo around the office a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The machismo of being a cowboy, that we forget they're professional athletes.
Mm.
And so to pay respect to another professional athlete, because not everybody will ever get to perform in that house. And those guys did this weekend, and a guy like Cole stepped up, who was out of the competition and got the opportunity to come back because somebody got hurt.
Yeah.
I think is just the sport as a whole was showing their respect to where,
says a lot
where they
about
were.
Cole. Says a lot about the opportunities that he's gotten. Yeah, he rode pretty well at the Global Cup.
Oh,
so I mean, it's just, and everybody kind of was in like, man, who's this young kid? Who's this? Same kind of the Dalen Swearingen. It's amazing that some of these guys get those opportunities, and it's like, how can they accomplish that? So, but it was good to see Cole take the win.
Well, and now to host that event in Los Angeles at the Staples Center, that shows you again what the PBR has been able to do. We play Madison Square Garden, Staples Center, the T-Mobile Arena, and AT&T Stadium. You think of all the championships and the championship games that have been put together in those 4 buildings alone.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. We, for those guys to be able to walk into those buildings, feel that history, get that momentum of sports for one of our major events says a lot
about the PBR.
It does. Yeah. It does. And the growth that we have had with the PBR.
I think we're going to continue to see growth in those events. But when you get to a major like that and you have the opportunity to have a major and you see somebody like Cole step up and win it, it's proving what those guys started 25 years ago, that this sport can do these things. We can give these guys a better opportunity. And this just happened to be another Cinderella story in the process.
Yeah. And if you're new to Western sports, watching or listening to this because of who we are locally in the area, the PBR started with $20,000.
Right. 20 guys pitched in what they had.
Yeah. They pitched in what they had, $1,000, started.
A couple of them wrote IOUs.
Yeah. I mean, Jerome Davis only had $500. And he said, I got to win next week. I'll bring you the money. He did, brought him an extra $500, and he was in. So what that has done is, when I do tours on the Velocity Tour, I say it's the true American success story, because they started with nothing and they have built it into this empire that it is today. That
the number one growing audience, spectator,
in that
sport.
And that literally, I owe the majority of what I have in life to the PBR, because it has given me an outlet. It's given me a job. You guys can say the same thing, that what the bull riding business and the PBR, especially growth, has done for your guys' company has been amazing.
Definite opportunity for us, and just in safety awareness, with head game and all that kind of stuff, the helmet, the head protection. But we've absolutely, and we do what we can to support that growth too as well. But it's great to see that it's continuing. And you're right. You start talking about Kobe's Place, Jerry's Palace, Jerry's house down, just being in those arenas kind of legitimizes, hopefully, for those guys, that they understand that. And you've seen it change in how they've approached it too, of being a professional sport.
So let's take that now to the PBR's Global Cup. Next weekend in Arlington, Texas, we will have the teams will get together and they will battle for the dirt, battle for global dominancy. Will the Brazilians win again? We're going to find out. Team USA seems to be, it's like one injury after another, after another, after another. But
especially
I think they
the
put
Wolves.
together a very strong team. The Wolves are kind of on the injured reserve list as well.
Yeah.
For those listening that don't know, the Global Cup is it's the only team format the PBR currently has in place. It's the only place where guys shed every sponsor and put on their country's colors, and they compete
as a team.
And I think it's the one thing that I look forward to the most. I enjoy the World Finals. I love the PBR Finals, the NFR, and those things. But the Global Cup for me is a whole different atmosphere, and the level of competition is raised. It is it's hard to explain when you're down there, because every week we see these guys compete by themselves, walk out of the arena by themselves, and their buddies will be close to them and those things. But down there it changes. Mm-hmm. It comes into the world of team sports.
I was thinking about this as we were talking last week, I think. You know how the NFL, the quarterbacks, they have the quarterbacks challenges. So then they bring the quarterbacks to Hawaii. They put the sand out. They put the targets up. And they have a quarterbacks challenge or a running backs challenge or an athlete. You know how they do that. It's almost like the opposite, of taking someone from an individual sport and put them in the team concept. I think that's intriguing for us. I mean, I share. It's probably my favorite event of the year.
It's mine. It definitely. I love the fact that these guys who work all year long as to be an individual shed it and instantly become a teammate.
And they do it enthusiastically. I mean, to be in the locker room, when we're checking in and we're doing our pre-event stuff, it's great to see how that camaraderie is there. Obviously coming from a coach guy, but I mean, that's what I value a lot.
And it's been cool to see how an outsider kind of has been accepted into that locker room, because for the last 2 years, Sage Kimsey has been a part of Team USA, world champion in the PRCA, not a part of the PBR full time. So now you're going to have Sage, Cole Melanson, and Boudreaux Campbell. Those are going to be three of them on there.
Right.
In that same locker room with Triplett and Jess Lockwood. And am I missing one?
Cody Teal.
So,
and that you could almost say Cody Teal
was a rodeo
PRCA guy. He's
yeah,
got a
and
gold
Cody
buckle
Teal was a
there.
PRCA
So 4
buckle champion. So you kind of got 4 rodeo guys in there, and then 2 guys that have literally cut everything they've got with PBR. But it's cool to see, and I've just noticed it. Last time was the first time I got to go and be a part of it, and that was Sunday afternoon. But yeah, to watch the teams just work together and how it changes their mindset on, like you said, not such an individual sport.
Yeah.
But who's the team to you that sticks out the most? Cris, start with you.
It's hard not to say the Brazilian team. I mean, I don't want to say there's a level of dominance, but there's been a level of performance, you know, and Jose is obviously as focused as we've seen anybody. You know, I take that back. He's as focused as we've seen Just Lockwood.
Yep.
You know, when he refocused and come back. And last year, when every interview was, he was the first one to say, "Yeah, I got soft. I'm not soft anymore."
Yeah.
I can't write every one of them, but I can damn sure believe that I'm going to. And you see that in Jose.
And world number 1, Joao Ricardo Vieira, is not a part of the Brazilian team.
Yeah. I'm not sure, you know.
I don't know either.
So if you look at the top 6 or 7 guys that they have on their team, and then there's JR, and then there's some other ones too that are on there, you know.
Yeah.
So I think the Brazilian team, considering everybody's health of everything, probably has to be the favorite to repeat.
Yeah.
You know,
Cody, what do you got your eye on?
You know, I think it's going to be a really different weekend, and I'm looking forward to it because you've got 9 world titles on the U.S. team. You've got 9 guys that have had to literally sit there and have ice water run through their veins. We saw it with Jess at the World Finals this year. You've got, between Cody Teal, Sage Kimsey, you've got some World Championship buckles that are there. So you got some guys that have been there. It's hard to count the Brazilians out because we're going to have a pin of bulls that we see all year. These are going to be bulls that they know the bull power that's coming
right
there. So the guys they're ready. They're already studying. I guarantee you, Kaiki is already breaking down round by round what bulls are there. And because we've watched it over the years, it's pretty amazing. You see a guy like Ty Murray, who is the king of the Cowboys. But to see him walk in and have the respect for a young guy like Kaiki and say, "Hey, what's this bull or this bull?" And it's because Ty is out of the game. I totally understand that. But it's also a level of respect because Kaiki breaks him down. He watches the video. Cris, being a football coach, is a big video guy. He's constantly watching video. But the bull power this weekend is going to be, I think, the deciding factor. The other deciding factor is we're going to see a different set of coaches than we've had thus far.
Yep.
And so I think that is going to be what drives
the change.
Yeah. And I think that goes back into the whole, Cris has said it for years. We talk about it a lot here in house, that when guys are starting to make the change from high school, college, whatever it may be, velocity to UTB, one thing a lot of those guys miss is they go from having like their dad or their best friends around them, and they help coach them, and they know what to say to them, and they've learned, they've traveled with them, and I think that's why we see the rodeo guys.
They're not driving 10 hours to an event by themselves in a car, sleeping at 3 truck stops,
right.
Getting there, walking into their room and going, "Man, I've been watching these guys for the last 6, 7, 8 years."
And so my dark horse and where I was going is that Jerome Davis, when his team was picked, went out and said, "You guys come to my house. Let's sit down and spend some time together so I can go ahead and figure out when it's time to put you on which bull and what bull you can and can't ride." And so he's really taken it from the coach's point. And I think that, not that Gaffney didn't or any of those things, but I think that we're going to see a different level of competition from Mexico than we've ever seen.
I agree.
Because of the way the coach is coaching them.
Yeah.
Just as we talked about Andy Reid and the Chiefs and those things earlier.
And I'm excited for them.
Absolutely, because there's not a nicer set of guys in the locker room than the Mexico team. They come up here and they're the closest to Texas. I mean, most of them, and they get in that locker room, and to be inside, that's something else I'll touch on real quick. To be inside Jerry's house, to be inside AT&T in the basement, and it's not even a basement, it's a bowl down there. I mean, there's a city down underneath the ground. You walk forever. I mean, I don't know how many miles we walk just back and forth in the arenas and everything. But those guys don't ever get lost down there. And I think it's that their coaches, and McBride does a great job.
It's the team thing.
But that's what I was going back to. To see them come down as a team, to walk out as a team, to play as a team, it's something that our sport has been missing for years. I heard 25 years ago, Leon Coffey talked about it. He said, man, we got to have team sport. People want us to be a team. We'll be better if we're a team. I think we're starting to see it. We know it's on the horizon. But this event legitimizes the team process. But again, my pick is, it's really hard because it's all going to come down to the Bulls. And I know that that's a lame duck statement, but if a coach can pick the right Bull for the right guy at the right time, that's who's going to win this event, because it's that even, I think.
Well, and I think either way, if you can't be there live, and I think it's one of the greatest absolute PBR events of the regular season, but this year it will be on Ride Pass. It will be on CBS, the mother channel, and it'll be on CBS Sports Network. So make sure that you check it out this weekend. The PBR Global Cup USA, presented by Monster Energy, sponsored by the WinStar World Casino. There we go. I think I got them all.
Well, I got one more tidbit.
Yeah.
We've also seen a number of guys that aren't riding very well right now. They're starting to get beat up. We talked about the injuries to each team.
Well, the top 10 in the world, though, are riding at over 47%. Let me go ahead and throw that little Justin Flisco at you right there.
Yeah.
But if you come backwards and you say, you've got a number of guys that just aren't really, they're not making the cut. I mean, you got Stetson, you got Luciano. I mean, not just the cut as far as tour is concerned. Right. They're just not riding very well. And so you take them to a global cup situation, watch what happens, because they get in that atmosphere. They clear their minds, and all of a sudden we've seen a surge out of guys that were not riding very well going in. They come out of there kicking ass. I mean, they just
and they keep that team concept for a few weeks afterwards.
We've seen that in the locker room, and we'll be lucky.
I was going to mention that when you were talking. It's really cool because the next couple of events, like in Kansas City and St. Louis and stuff, we typically see the post events guys that normally don't hang around, all of a sudden hang around.
Yeah,
They're grouping themselves, not segregating, but they tend to group themselves in the locker rooms, and to me, that's kind of
cool. Last year we saw a different locker room too at the Global Cup. The sport had just lost an individual. They just lost a competitor. They'd lost a brother, a friend, and all those things. And that was still running into that locker room. And so even though there were teams last year, it was still really united. I'm curious to see this year if it goes back to like it was in Edmonton, where it was just, you could walk in a locker room and it was no holds bar. I mean, those guys were out. It's like, this is my team.
Yeah.
Last year was, like I said, the camaraderie. This year, I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see the teams.
You see it once in a while, like at the UTB, and the Team Cooper guys will be going, make sure you're all standing on the back of the chute, spotting, obviously looking for that TV marketing opportunity. You're not having to tell these guys. They feel it.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, okay, rah, 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 when you come in here, I want you to stay. No. They sure, Cooper's leaning over. You have Chase Outlaw, who's,
which I think is another thing. Outlaw will be back this weekend. He's going to be a cheerleader. He's going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've made a point to say that.
He's an assistant coach now.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But not only is he a cheerleader, he's an assistant coach. And so now all of
motivation.
I was going to say, I want to see him chuck it.
So now you've got a guy that's got the drive, that's healing, that all of a sudden he's going to stand back there, and I'll guarantee you, he'll grab Sage, he'll grab Boot. It doesn't matter who it is.
Get your stuff
if they've got a Team Eagles uniform on, he's going to push them. Yeah. And I can't wait for that.
And you can sit there and you can break down the other top 35 guys in the world, and you can go, well, why didn't that guy get on the team? Or why didn't that guy get on the team?
There's a lot of those.
Or those riders are going, well, I got passed up.
Yeah.
If you're in, and I'm sorry, if you're getting passed up, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
There's a reason that you're getting passed up. And I think it's an amazing team. I
think about
all
what
of
the
them are
coaches
great.
have to think about in that situation. Think about it. It's like,
absolutely.
does this guy perform well in big situations? There are really guys in the top 35. They never do well when it's on, but they're always going to be there.
But they're
right?
always consistent.
There's guys that all of a sudden, that opportunity comes but they can't string them together.
Yep.
Yeah, Global Cup will be a lot of fun this weekend.
It'll be fun. So
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of everything.
Mm.
At the end of the day, though, when we leave there, the last couple of years, when we left Edmonton and pulled out of there, there is a sense of camaraderie amongst the entire group, no matter what team or country you come from. That when you walk out of there, it's like, wow, we just got to do something that nobody else has got to do.
We just got to, it's just got to overcome that injury bug.
And you're stepping into a building that is as big as the town that we're in right now of Tracy, Missouri. But like, there is no cooler place to watch something than AT&T Stadium. And you'll go in there and think, well, boy, those would be terrible seats. No,
there's not a bad seat in the house.
I mean, there's a television screen up there that will just blow your mind. You can't walk 2 steps in that building without still seeing the action one way or another. And then to feel the people cheering for their country and to bring that in is just it's just such a cool atmosphere.
I don't know if there's another event. How many seats are at the NFR? 16?
16,000.
Okay. I think last year they said something about like 40 plus.
I think we were 45,000 last year in that building.
Yeah. How many of those guys have ridden in front of 40,000 people? A handful.
Yeah.
Some of the Brazilians because of Bredos.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure there's a bigger spectator audience for them.
No,
it's live.
It's one of the coolest places just to watch sports as a whole, no matter what sport it is. Like I said, AT&T Stadium. Check it out this week. Ride Pass and on CBS and CBS Sports Network. Let's transition to. We didn't put this podcast together to sell helmets.
Right.
It's not about that. But part of what this is about is to help understand safety.
Yeah.
Safety as a whole with our sport, because it's something that it's been slow to come along. Now it's catching on.
Yeah. Seems to get the traction.
It's a deal where when you start as a young competitor in Western sports, you have to wear a helmet now. And then so that is bringing its way. The PBR has already made those standards where you have to wear a helmet. We're not saying that you have to wear a 100X helmet, but however, we are saying that there are right ways to wear one and wrong ways to wear one.
No doubt.
So let's go ahead and get into the helmet tip of the week and show the viewers what kind of how they're supposed to be worn. I guess.
But I think let me grab this one. So I think what we watch constantly as we're out and about at the events and everything. So I'm always walking up. Doesn't matter if it was Tanner Byrne when he was riding because he's a big long chin guy, or PBR locker room or wherever, YBR. It doesn't matter. The things that we look for most is how the helmet's sitting on the head, and it's supposed to be ridden. It's supposed to ride just like that. And so our biggest concern is that the helmet's got to fit. Right. And so the first thing we do is when we put it on, we want to make sure that brow line, we can use this wire right here, is parallel with the ground, and so we want that down almost kind of on top of the eyes and even kind of a little bit more. So when we tighten it up, when we cinch these up, it's really going to sit right in that groove. And it usually takes about 3, 4, 5 minutes, So with Bradley the other day, and we were talking Bradley Britton and put it on and said, hey, just walk through. He'd never had one on, and so he put it on and we tightened it down. And as it sit up into a seat, it's like, wow, because I was worried about not seeing, because it was down low. And so he was understanding it. So, and how you do that is these 2 straps right here, the 2 front straps on it, that keeps that brow line where we want it. And so we'll talk tidbits here and there about different things in the helmet. We just don't want that chin sticking out too far underneath the bottom. It can be below the face frame, and how we do that is maintaining or just controlling that strap.
Well, and if your helmet doesn't fit right, you don't see out of it either.
Right.
You catch a bar in your eyes.
I'm going to make a point on that. As we're talking about that tip, we want to make sure you're as successful at what you do as possible.
Right.
We want to make sure your equipment helps you be successful. I don't care if that's your rope, your helmet, your chaps, your spurs, it does not matter. Your cowboy hat.
Right.
If something is irritating, bothering, you're not going to be able to be at the level where you need to be.
Right.
And so that simple tip that he gave right there, making sure it's on the brow and ready and in place, is only going to make you more successful because of the way the helmet's made.
And a lot of the guys who either hat down or they've been wearing the hockey style, right? So that hockey style sits really high up on your forehead. And so when we walk through, the Invincible was down low around the brow. And so, so some of those guys have been used to it, but it's a different feeling, when they start putting it on. But it's also a different feeling once they cinch that up and put it on. They're like, oh man, I can tuck my chin. So that's our goals. It's about success. We're not getting on the back of bulls, but we're fighting to bring that technology to, every level, especially the young guys, so when they go through the ranks.
First episode almost in the can.
Yeah, getting close.
Just a little to the viewers, if you got something you want to talk about, want us to talk about, any contestants that you want to see call into the shows, legends, we're gonna try to incorporate phone calls throughout this podcast as well. But anything else you guys want to touch on?
No, I'm happy for all the guys who win, and we have relationships with a lot of them. But again, it's pretty exciting to see Cole Melanson, step up. Even being out of the top 4, and I'm sure he was disappointed, but still, even at that, how good would that have been? We'd all be sitting there celebrating. Cole Melanson stepped up, finished 5th, right? Then all of a sudden, Dirt gets hurt, can't go.
I think
he's running to the chutes. He's standing. Yeah. He's sitting on his locker with his cowboy hat, and they're doing. You're in. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's so cool about our sport is. You truly could have been riding in the BOA finals this weekend in Iowa. And next week you could be in Fort Worth, or actually Fort Worth is over. You can be in San Antonio this week. And all of a sudden you've entered an event, and the next thing you know, you are at AT&T Stadium.
Yeah.
That's what people they forget about our sport. You don't have to do the cookie cutter basics of the other professional sports. If you've got a guy that's got the grit and the determination and the try, at any level, he can go be successful. And that's
always exciting.
That's what's exciting about this, and then especially this podcast. I mean, we got a lot of guys that are local and regional, and bull riding as a whole. We talk a lot about bull riding. We could sit and talk rodeo the whole day. I mean, but what's exciting too is that we have a whole another age group of kids that are down there that are coming up. We've got
and they're squeezing some of those guys that have been in the top 30. They're squeezing some of those guys out.
And we've got a whole nother level. I'm going back down into our little guys. I mean, we've got a number of youth bull riders right now that have learned the basics. They're learning the fundamentals. You've got use the Sports Performance Center right now with the PBR. There's 60 guys out there today that are all levels, that are all practicing together, working out together for the first time ever in our sport. And now all of a sudden we're going to see a whole nother crop. And it starts with those little guys that, from the YBR and MBR at every level of youth rodeo and little britches. And all of a sudden we're starting to see a competitive edge in these kids. It's different than we've ever had before. And I think it really, if you start to watch, started with kids like Sage Kimsey a few years ago, because that's when the process was put in place. And now we've got a kid that's got 6 world championships.
How do the guy, you look at below the 35 right now, just in the PBR. You guys, Cody Teal, I want to say Cody Jesus, is outside, probably close enough. But you go through Cannon Cravens is 46. I know some of these guys will have, exemptions where they get back and so they can get points and stuff. But you go through, man, it's a lot of those guys are just sitting there. Silvano Alves, I know he has the exemption and everything, but he's sitting outside the top. He's sitting at 48, and that's awesome. Because that means we're raising the level, because if those guys aren't in the top 35, there's some pretty damn good young kids coming.
Yeah, it's an entirely new year, and going back to what stood out at Iron Cowboy was Joao Ricardo Vieira gets again inside of the top 2 and could have won the Iron Cowboy again.
I know.
I mean, how good is this guy at the age that he's at, that every single year we talk about him being a world title contender?
Again, I think you'll find guys that are one ride guys, and you're going to find guys that are 2, 3, and 4 guys.
How many times did they say?
How many times have we seen Cody Teal get on 4 or 5 head a day and still be consistent?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't up your adrenaline, down your adrenaline, up your adrenaline, down, and still ride them. I mean, you can start going through this list. And all of a
Jess
sudden,
had to do that the other day. Literally had to get off the bull, run around, give his rope to somebody. You know, he ran up, kind of refocus, and
and a lot of that is focus. You know, Cody Teal. I mean, he gets excited about paper and cereal. Maybe a Rockstar energy drink. There's not. He's about as even tequila guy as you're ever gonna meet. So that was LA. That was the week, and we will see how things wrap out this next weekend. Memphis, Tennessee is going to be a velocity event, as I spoke about. It'll be a good time to watch Stone Ride Pass because I'm telling you, there's going to be some guys there we're not used to seeing on that tour because they're not a part of a Global Cup team. And then Global Cup from AT&T Stadium in Arlington.
We still got San Antonio.
Yep, San Antonio still going on. San Angelo will wrap up. Tucson will start soon. There's a
Jackson, Mississippi. Is that that's going on right now?
Dixie
right?
National still going on. It'll wrap up next weekend. For those of you that don't like the word Western sports, well, guess what? There's a lot of Western sports going on in the world. And if you didn't hear it at the beginning, Kansas City is the Super Bowl champions. That's all today from the 100X studio. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll talk to you next week.